I'm Augusta, and I'm here to talk about mangroves. Mangroves are a type of tree called halophytes, which means they can tolerate high levels of salt. They're not true marine plants, however, because they're not completely submerged in salt water all the time. The term mangrove is not really a proper classification, but it's more of an ecological description describing these types of trees and shrubs. Mangroves are all angiosperms, which means they're all flowering plants that are found in tropical and subtropical regions, usually by river deltas. Experts believe that mangroves have their origins in the Southeast Asian region, right here in our backyard. This is because the Southeast Asian and Indo-Malayan ecological regions have the highest diversity of mangrove species in the entire world. Scientists believe that mangroves were brought to other countries by floating propagals brought westward through India and East Africa by wind and currents. Mangroves are vastly important to the world ecology for four main reasons. Firstly, they buffer the land from the sea. Secondly, they act as breeding grounds and nurseries for juvenile sea life. They also help reclaim land and trap sediment and river runoff from getting into the ocean. Mangroves are important because they buffer the land from the sea. This means that they provide basically a natural barrier between the ocean and the continents. Mangroves provide a natural protection against soil erosion by acting as a barrier between the waves and the storms and our own land. They also help slow down the rising water levels due to global warming and act as a barrier to storms, typhoons, hurricanes, tsunamis, and other natural disasters originating from the ocean. Furthermore, they act as a breeding ground for all sea life. Mangroves provide a level of protection for juvenile fish by having intricate root networks that larger predators cannot gain access to. Many species of pelagic fish lay their eggs here, and many fish also spend their early developmental years here. Mangroves are also home to many crabs and other crustaceans because there's a lot of detritus from the bark and falling leaves to use as food. Mangroves are unique because they're one of the few places on Earth where the land is actually growing as opposed to shrinking and being eaten up by the ocean. As mangroves grow outwards into the sea, they fasten the soil with their roots and essentially make the continents slightly bigger. Mangroves are also a key ecological player by preventing sediment and runoff from rivers from getting into the ocean. The roots of the trees act as a natural sieve to catch the sediment before it reaches the ocean. This directly prevents the death of seagrasses and reefs because if too much sediment gets into the water, the ecosystems do not get enough sunlight and they begin to die off. The destruction of mangrove ecosystems has many repercussions. Areas that once had lush mangroves, which now lay bare, will begin to experience soil erosion from the ocean. Storms that hit the area will be stronger and cause more damage. Without a place for their young to grow, the local fish populations will begin to drop. Reefs and grasses will begin to slowly wither and die as the oceans become cloudy with sediment. Mangroves face several threats, most of them due to humans. Construction and pollution will both have a detrimental effect to mangroves. Good places to put ports also tend to be good places for mangroves to grow, and humans will clear the mangroves just to put in a port. Mangrove trees can be used for furniture, fuel, and wood, and deforestation will lead to the destruction of an ecosystem. The resources of a mangrove can eventually be sucked dry by man. Growing in the same environment as a mangrove is a near impossible feat for most plants. Mangroves have many difficulties that they have had to adapt to, such as coping with a high concentration of salt, dealing with extreme weather conditions such as storms and tsunamis, the rising and ebbing tides, nutrient-poor soil, and even establishing their seedlings can prove a challenge. Mangroves have had to develop many adaptations to cope with these challenges, such as complex root structures, pneumatophores, lenticels, propagals, and salt expulsion methods. Mangroves have several different kinds of roots to help cope with the harsh conditions. Prop roots are strong root structures that literally prop the trunk higher up off the ground, sometimes even lifting the entire trunk off the ground. These are called stilt roots. Pneumatophores are root-like structures that stick right above the ground to exchange gases. Knead roots are bent, knobbly roots that have a larger surface area to help with the diffusion of gases. And drop roots are root-like structures that hang from the branches so that the trees can exchange gases while the tide is high. Pneumatophores are root-like structures that extend above the ground from the roots. These may be some distance from the root itself or right around the trunk. These pneumatophores can still exchange gases while the tide is somewhat high and most of the other roots are being suffocated. You can liken pneumatophores to a snorkel for breathing while scuba diving. These are more typical of black mangroves than red. Lenticels are pores that can cover the root, trunk, and pneumatophores of the mangrove plant. These allow for a direct exchange of gases between the trunk of the plant and the atmosphere. These can be found on both red and black mangroves. Propagals are the seedlings of a mature mangrove plant. The word propagal literally means potential plant. This shows that the mangroves are viviparous, which means that the next generation of plants begin their life growing on the mature plant. There are different types of propagals based on the type of mangrove. Generally, the closer to the ocean a mangrove is, the larger the propagal. Mangroves seem to thrive in a harsh, salty environment that no other plant on Earth can survive in. This is because of how they have developed salt methods to expel the salt from the system. Some mangroves, like rhizophoras, filter out the salt directly at their roots, but not by letting very little to no salt into their systems, while others, such as white mangrove plants, excrete the salts directly out of their leaves, leaving a white salt crystal residue, hence the name. The following slides contain pictures from our field trip to Sungai Buloh Wetland Reserve. These pictures show a rhizophora mangrove, which is a red mangrove. Red mangroves are the type of mangrove that are found closest to the ocean. Rhizophoras can be distinguished by their prop roots and their drop roots, and their large spear-like propagals that drop directly in between the roots of the mature plant. These mangroves are of the Bulgaria species. They're also red mangroves and found closer to the ocean. However, they have knobby knead roots. They can be distinguished by their knee roots, red flowers, and thick propagals. The following pictures are from the Avicennia species of mangrove. They are a black mangrove that are found farther inland. They have pneumatophores that distinguish them, and very small propagals and flowers. The small propagals are so that when the tide comes in, they also bring drop propagals with them, allowing them to be pushed further inland.